Okay, when I say Battle of Britain, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's this incredible image, right? Blue skies, white contrails, dueling fighter planes defending the island against just impossible odds. It's one of those moments in history that's defined by the planes that held the line. But here's a thought. What if the plane we all picture isn't the one that actually did most of the work? So let's really get into it. For, decades, the popular story of that crazy summer in 1940 has been all about one fighter, the Supermarine Spitfire. It was sleek, elegant, and icon. But do the facts actually point somewhere else? Was the Spitfire really the plane that delivered the knockout blow to the Luftwaffe?
Well, take a look at this. The Spitfire, no doubt, totally captured the hearts and minds of the public. But the numbers? They tell a very, very different story. The Hawker Hurricane was actually responsible for shooting down more enemy aircraft than all other British defenses combined. It was the statistical victor, the true heavyweight champ of the battle.
So today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're putting the spotlight right on that unsung hero. This is the story of the Hurricane, the rugged, reliable, and absolutely decisive workhorse that really saved Britain in its darkest hour. Now, to understand why the Hurricane was so darned effective, we've got to go back to how it was designed. See, it wasn't born from a desire to create the most cutting-edge, advanced fighter out there. Nope. It came from a need to create the most practical one. The whole thing came down to a deliberate choice by its designer, Sidney Cam. Instead of going for a super modern, all-metal design like the Spitfire, he used a method that was tried and true, a steel tube frame covered in fabric. Now, that might sound a little old-fashioned, but it meant two crucial things. You could build them fast, and you could repair them easily, right there on the airfield. And this slide right here, this just lays it all out, plain and simple. Look at those numbers. A Hurricane took about 10,300 man-hours to build. A Spitfire, over 15,000. That's a huge difference. Think about it. When war is breathing down your neck and every single plane counts, being able to build them faster isn't just a bonus, it's a strategic weapon. You can just get more planes in the air, simple as that. That practical design also made it incredibly tough. Unlike a metal plane where a hit might require specialized work, the Hurricane's structure could take a real beating. Cannon shells could literally pass right through the fabric without exploding, so a damaged Hurricane could often be patched up by the ground crew and sent right back into the fight, sometimes the very next day. But don't let the simple construction fool you. The Hurricane was built around a pretty revolutionary idea for the time, a battery of 8 Browning machine guns, all packed into the wings. This gave it this concentrated blast of firepower that could just shred an enemy bomber in seconds. It basically set a whole new standard for what a fighter should be armed with. So let's fast forward and see how this all came together in the summer of 1940. When the Battle of Britain kicked off, the Hurricane wasn't just another fighter in the sky. It was the absolute backbone of the Royal Air Force. I mean, the numbers on this slide really speak for themselves. At the start of the battle, more than half of Fighter Command's squadrons were flying Hurricanes. They outnumbered every other fighter, including the Spitfires. So when the Luftwaffe came over, it was the Hurricane they met first, and in the greatest numbers. Okay, now this is probably the single most important number in this entire story. 55%. That's the percentage of all Luftwaffe aircraft shot down during the Battle of Britain by Hurricanes. Just let that sink in for a second. More than half, more than every other defense, Spitfires, anti-aircraft guns, everything combined. That's just staggering. Now look, it wasn't a perfect dogfighter. The German Messerschmitt Bf 109, it was faster, and it could outclimb the Hurricane. But the Hurricane had a critical ace up its sleeve. It could turn on a dime. And in the absolute chaos of a dogfight, that agility was often the difference between life and death. And who better to explain it than someone who was actually there? Pilot Officer Jeffrey Page summed up the tactic perfectly. You didn't even try to outrun a 109. You dragged it into a turning fight where the Hurricane's strengths would win out. Before he knew it, the tables were turned and you were right on his tail. The Battle of Britain really cemented the Hurricane's place in history for sure, but its story was far from over. This amazing aircraft went on to serve in pretty much every major theater of the Second World War. From the deserts of North Africa and the skies over Malta, to the frozen Eastern Front with the Soviets and the jungles of Southeast Asia, the Hurricane proved its worth over and over again. They even had Sea Hurricanes launching from the decks of aircraft carriers to protect those vital convoys. And its job just kept evolving. It became Britain's main night fighter during the Blitz. It was adapted into the Hurry bomber to attack ground targets, and my favorite, it was fitted with two massive 40mm cannons, earning it the nickname the Flying Can Opener for its knack for taking out German tanks. By the time the last one was built in 1944, nearly 14,500 had been made. So what's the big takeaway here? The Hawker Hurricane wasn't the fastest, it wasn't the sexiest fighter of the war, but its genius was in its practicality. It was cheap to build, easy to fix, tough as nails, and, most importantly, it was there in huge numbers when it mattered most. It was, without a doubt, the right plane at exactly the right time.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? History is just full of these famous names and celebrated icons, but sometimes the contributions that really turn the tide come from the overlooked workhorses. It kind of begs the question, what other pivotal stories are just hiding there, right beneath the surface?